Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's discussion that dives into the intersections of achieving sustainable farming and nutritional security vis-a-vis with the upcoming modern technology of vertical farming. Discussion is under the banner of our upcoming event in Dubai called the Global Vertical Farming Show. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm thrilled to have with me Mr. Deepak Pareek, the founder of HnyB Tech-Incubations and a sought-after agriculture economist and technology strategist. Together, we will explore the objectives and future scope of vertical farming. Welcome, Mr. Deepak, and thank you for joining us today on this discussion.
Thanks a lot, Tanya, for inviting me for this interesting discussion. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin. Mr. Deepak, we know that today the number of cities is growing rapidly, right? And this takes up a large space, both rural and urban. This eventually leads to reduction in natural resources or the land available for traditional farming. So, for our listeners today, kindly start by explaining what vertical farming really is, since you're an expert, and how do you think that it is relevant in today's world?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tanya, but I don't believe in that word expert because I believe we all are students and I am a very humble student of agriculture. Agriculture brings surprise every day for you. And
Right.
at the same time, agriculture is very important for a very simple reason is that it touches two very important aspects of our human society. One is food
Mhm.
security and another is the livelihood of the farmers. Now, when we talk about food security, we know that in some of the countries, there is a challenge of availability of the land, availability of water, and availability of labor. For example, when we talk about typically the Middle East, there are
Right.
challenges where actually we have arid zone and we have lack of water and all those things associated which are required for the farming. And in these
Mhm.
scenarios, vertical farming plays a very important and vital role to ensure food security. In these geographies, 80 to 85% of food is imported. And when you are having supply chain disruption, for
Right.
example, we have seen what happened in COVID and Russia-Ukraine war, and where actually, when supply chains are fragile, suddenly you start looking at the food security and nutritional security of a country, which becomes of paramount interest. And this is where I believe the vertical farming revolution is going to have a profound impact. Other than that, also in some of the urban locations, for example, whether we talk about Jakarta, Tokyo, Mumbai, Bangalore,
Mhm.
where you want your perishable food, typically fruits and vegetable, to be delivered within, say, 24 hours or 48 hours, there vertical farming can play a very vital role because you are able to produce far more with limited availability of land and water, and hence ensure that you would get the great food on your table.
Right. I think with your answer, it is very clear to me that the vertical farming can lead to achieving increased crop yields in a very small or a crammed up space, especially in today's time where wars are happening and where resources are really being compromised. So, adding to this, Mr. Deepak, kindly highlight some more on how the vertical farm technique is making strides to achieve sustainability, because obviously it is one of the very most important goals. The UN is continuously focusing on it? And are there any specific emerging technologies that are used in this process?
Yeah, sure. So one thing is that when we say sustainable agriculture, we have to understand that any food saved from wastage is
Right.
basically enabling the sustainable agriculture and sustainability of
Mhm.
the planet. Vertical farming ensure that actually you are having the cultivation of food in a manner where the infestation of pests and disease can be
Right.
minimized, and
Right.
hence you have far better yields, and hence you are able to ensure that with minimal resources being applied, whether it is water, whether it is agriculture input, you are able to produce more. So that is one very simple aspect of it. Secondly, because vertical farms are predominantly very close to the consumption centers, as I was talking about some of the cities, Tokyo,
Right.
Jakarta, Bangalore, uh,
Mhm.
Dubai, you find that actually, that transportation led footprint of greenhouse gases is reduced substantially because
Right.
within span of 15 to 20 kilometers, you are able to deliver the food. That saves food also because the wastage is less. At the same time, it also ensures that your carbon footprint is lower because the transportation is less. So by all these things, and then another aspect is reduce use of water.
Right.
Typically, whether you are talking about hydroponic system or you're talking about aeroponics or your
Mhm.
mist-based agriculture, all that reduces the usage of water substantially because actually it is water is used in a circular manner rather than actually just used typically in a conventional farm where you just flood
Exactly.
irrigate and actually a lot of water gets evaporated. Now, coming to
Mhm.
some of the technologies which I believe, going forward would make vertical farming more sustainable, is use of artificial intelligence because that
Okay.
will ensure that you use precise use of inputs. So any reduced usage of input leads to more sustainable world.
Mm.
Secondly is also like, typically fogging and misting technologies, which reduces substantially even more than hydroponic, the usage of water. Now that also adds substantial, I'd say, that value when we talk about sustainability. Third part is when we talk about blockchain. So typically when you are able to trace your food, in case something goes wrong, you know exactly which best to replace rather than actually dumping all the food which is available in a supermarket. So that also
Right.
saves a lot of environmental resources. I believe all these technologies going forward will make vertical farming or controlled environment farming more sustainable for environment.
Absolutely. And I think with the kind of upcoming technologies that we have, we understand that sustainable farming is not just about maximizing profits right now, but it is also to take a thoughtful and an effective use of how we can utilize our non-renewable resources, right? So this takes me to my next question, Mr. Deepak, that then what about the nutritional security of the food produced in these vertical farms? I mean, how can the people in the market who are our potential buyers of these products be assured that there is not a lack of nutritional value in these crops, since they are unlike to the traditional method of crop production? So what about that?
Now, see, when you produce food in typically conventional farming, which is basically soil-based farming,
Right.
nutrients are typically absorbed by the plants, and then actually it comes to your food. And I believe, like, that is in the ideal situation the best way of growing food. But with
Right.
all the limitations we are having, vertical farming systems, they've been able to use technology to ensure that the sufficient availability of balanced nutrition is there in the whatever food is produced. So typically, by application of the input itself, the
Hmm.
nutrients, fortification of those nutrients in typically a hydroponic or aeroponic ecosystem, we are able to ensure that there is sufficient nutrition in your typically food. One
Right.
another, I say that aspect of vertical farming or hydroponics, aeroponics is that because it is soilless cultivation, the infestation of disease, which might end up with like in your food table, reduce substantially because actually it is controlled environment and it is not having access to the physical world where you are having a lot of disease and infestation of typically your pest and diseases. So I
Right.
believe in that way you can enrich your food in nutrition at the same time also reduce the possibility of investment in your food.
Right. So that is interesting to know. But then again, I would like to understand. We talked about the market right now, we talked about the buyers, but what is the prospect for investments and investors? How should they be looking forward to a vertical farming setting, or what kind of investments, or how regulatory reforms, can aid investment, especially international investment into the vertical farming projects in in various regions, let's say Middle East, or maybe in some Asian countries as well?
No, see, investment actually, we have seen that pre-COVID, there were huge investment which happened in vertical
Right.
farming. But just before COVID, then the realization happened that actually the cost of cultivation in vertical farming was very high and
Hmm.
appropriate technologies were not available to reduce the cost. So typically,
Right.
you are looking at 100% premium when food is being produced in vertical farms, and that leads to a very niche type of people using those products.
Right.
Now we are in 2024 or 5, and this is where actually you've seen that the modern technology has also reduced the cost of cultivation substantially, whether it is
Absolutely.
capital or operational cost related
Hmm.
to the vertical farming. And that has reduced the premium demand to between 10% to 30%, depending on the crop you're talking about, and
Right.
hence there are more consumer. So going forward, the investors are coming back to vertical farming for very simple reason. From a niche product, it has become a product which could be used by a wide number of people. So from middle class to upper middle class to higher class, all can afford this type of product. And especially in countries like UAE or Singapore or even
Right.
USA, you find that actually that affordability is there at the price point now which these products are available. Now,
Right.
coming to the important question you asked about where the regulatory mechanism can play, I believe the
Absolutely.
incentivization, because of the climate impact of vertical farming,
Hmm.
as we talked about sustainability, I think society should be okay to pay a little bit more for such product, and this could be eventually be supported by the government. And I've seen that the government in Middle East they are supporting it, but because actually
Right.
they have lack of land and lack of water, and the
Exactly.
food security actually you cannot put a tab or a price on that. So when any product, any technology which enables the food security, the
Right.
countries and the governments can incentivize it, and they are already doing it. In fact, there is a fund of $250 million available in just UAE itself for such
Hmm.
initiative in agri-tech. I think all these things would help investor have more confidence in investing in these technologies.
I think that was some compelling advice from you, Mr. Deepak. And I think it is very important, especially for investors who know we are currently living in a globalized world. So it is very important for us to understand different markets. So thank you for that compelling advice. And with that, I would like to wrap up this discussion for us. Thank you so much for all the answers. And I hope you enjoyed your time for this discussion.